Hello again, this is Michael Wojcik with your Our-Town Legislative Rundown. We truly have a historic state surplus right now, and it's giving opportunities for the state budget that we haven't seen in at least a generation. The fact that the current surplus represents about 30% of the last biennium budget really does create unique opportunities. And this week, we saw Governor Tim Walz propose a budget. Now, the governor's budget typically never becomes law because there's a lot of compromise that has to happen, but it does highlight some of the key priorities. And if I were to look at the surplus that we had coming into this year and break it up, I would say roughly 1/3 of that surplus is going back to the taxpayers in various tax credits and cuts. Another 1/3 is going towards inflationary or slightly greater than inflationary increases in different budget items. And 1/3 is going to other things. You're always covered when you say other things. Now, some of the key priorities that we see coming out of this budget is substantial increase in education funding for K-12 education, but also the creation of a workforce sick leave policy that would basically allow employers to pay into a pot similar to what happens with unemployment insurance, and all employees in the state of Minnesota would have the opportunity for sick leave and family leave when it's needed. Included in the hundreds of pages of budget material were a number of non-budgetary items that were put out for consideration by Governor Walz. This included some framework on how the issue of dealing with people's past criminal records might be resolved should cannabis become legal in the state of Minnesota. An important part of a bill becoming law is that it has to meet certain thresholds and actions by each legislative body. Certain dates have to be met, and those dates came out this week. By March 10th, a bill originating in the House or Senate must have the support of that particular chamber. By March 24th, the opposite chamber must also show support. And finally, by April 4th, anything that affects the bottom line budget has to have consensus between the House and Senate. That's how these bills will become law. Transitioning to bills that have seen action in this last week, local legislator Tina Liebling introduced a bill that would require crisis pregnancy centers who receive state funding to pass along medically accurate advice. This has been brought up in previous sessions but has yet to see action. Additionally, something that speaks near and dear to my heart, there is a bill that would require the sale of a catalytic converter to a scrap dealer to be accompanied by documentation that proves it was associated with a vehicle and not stolen. And finally, moving in both the House and the Senate is a clean energy bill that would require all energy in the state of Minnesota to come from carbon-free sources by 2040. This not only affects energy in Minnesota, but also energy coming from other states. That point source in those other states must also be carbon-free. This is Michael Wojcik, and I look forward to catching you for our next legislative rundown.